start with the approval of the minutes from last meeting. Here first. Second. And then second. I'm sorry? The minutes.
Agenda.
Oh, yeah, you gotta approve the agenda too.
Okay, approve the agenda. Second. Pete. Let me get the agenda.
Then ask if they approve the agenda. All
We-
those that approve.
We did that, right? Yeah. Oh, all approve, say aye. Aye.
And who was the, who made the motion to approve the minutes?
Mike,
Mike and Pete.
second Pete.
Second. Both cases.
Both
Yeah.
cases, yep. So I guess we'll move into to tonight's agenda, starting with a special use permit for the Blowing Rock Country Club Pro Shop.
Okay. All right, this is a special use permit 2021-01. The reason it's from last year is that the club first made the application then and just suspended the process until they were ready to go back before the board. So that's the numbering. The country club is requesting this special use permit to construct a new pro shop at 200 Country Club Drive. The new pro shop will be located between the current clubhouse and the Cart Barn Fitness Center. And is at the location of the previous Cart Barn. Looking at this aerial. You can see the area that's, you see the putting green is just between that and the parking lot. Is you okay with that? This property is 5.5 acres and it's split R15 and R6M, multifamily. The R15 is this portion, and then the R6 is where the fitness center and parking lot is. Doesn't really have any bearing that these uses are allowed in that zoning district. Originally there was a plan submitted, and I'll pull that up, that showed the building. Here's the site plan. Well, this one is the site plan. So I'll pull that for you. You received all this in your packet, but this building, this version did not show the setback. And you can see the right-of-way line that's in there. But when we checked it out, it violated that setback. So they revised that plan and moved the building back about 7 feet. And you can see, and I sent this to you by email, that the setback line comes right to the edge of the eave overhang for that portion of the building. So that meets the code. And they were able to scoot the building back off the street a little bit. So they'll not need the setback topography variance, which is allowed in the ordinance administratively. The pro shop requires 20 parking spaces, and the parking lot that was created when the Cart Barn and fitness facility was built has more than enough parking for that use and for use of the pro shop based on the number of parking spaces they can need. So well over 100 parking spaces was provided, and so that would be sufficient for this. We're working with Alan Freeze with Municipal on finding an optimal location for a handicap space to provide access. And you can see where access would be provided. Little sidewalk coming in on the west side of the building, and that'll be the access into the building for ADA accessibility. There's also access from, sidewalk access from the old pro shop, which is part of the clubhouse. And that, you can't count the spaces that are part of the clubhouse for this because the distance is too great. So an immediate parking space for ADA accessibility to the building would be from the parking lot at the car lot. So if you're able to follow that, it's a little bit confusing, but they are able to work out those design details. And when they submit for building permit, that's when that will be checked, that they meet their criteria. From an architectural standpoint, this shows the building size. This is the south elevation on the top. And then the east elevation below that. East facing the road, is that right? Is this the version that's facing the road, that one on the bottom?
That's correct.
Facing Country Club Drive. And then the other version shows the north elevation facing the clubhouse, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then below would be the west elevation, which faces the course. Faces Holden Ford.
Moving towards the road,
Okay. And the materials that are being used would match that are being used on the country, on the clubhouse and the car barn. Pretty straightforward concept. We've known for years that they were wanting to replace, move the pro shop and replace the structure they had for the car barn once they built that new a few years back. They can meet the criteria for setbacks and ADA accessibility. Building height meets the land use code based on where it is measured from the primary entrance. And I'll be glad to answer questions, and the applicants here as well, Martha and Todd from the club, and now with municipal engineering.
So there's no variances involved in this?
No, there's not. No.
So, okay.
When I first sent you that staff report 10 days ago, there was some concern that it was something we didn't find, and they were able to move the building back. Needing the variance.
Kevin, when I was growing up, the caddy shack was on that property. And so it's been used for 70 or more years for something related to the country club. Why would it have been zoned R15 and multifamily, given the use of historic use?
I don't know. It was zoned in the late 70s, early 80s.
You know,
And residential, there is a residential component for the club. You know, there is a part that on Country Club Drive, there's houses that are part of the club, or subdivision. There are other parts that surround it that are all residential and all focused and centered around the course. But R15 is a zoning district that allows for golf courses and recreation of that type. I don't know why it was on that way, but a lot of it had to do with the residential nature of it. Club's 106 years old, so it's been going. I guess I didn't want to ruin a good thing.
Does it meet the ADA handicap parking requirements?
It will.
It will.
It will have to meet the building code to be able to issue a building permit. And they've got parking
I saw
in the immediate area.
I saw they added like 100 spaces a few years.
Yeah. So,
But they'll just turn.
for example, to get into the cart barn ADA, there are spaces, and you see the blue hash area
Mhm.
on this end, that's to get into that level. There's also a requirement for ADA spaces in the other part of the parking lot. They may need to move one of those to a corner, and they can add one, they can eliminate one, they can just make a space and be able to get in. The ADA space starts at the parking space and carries on into the building, so everything has to be accessible from that point into the building. And there's an elevator inside, so if you get into the main level on the bottom, you can go up through by an elevator. Any other questions for me? Y'all have anything you want to add?
I mean, if you have any questions for us, that's fine.
Close discussion here and open public discussion. If there's anything anybody wants to add, then I'll move to close our discussion open to public.
So we,
Second.
all in favor?
All in favor? Okay.
So you have to make a motion. Y'all close the public hearing, now you need to have a motion for discussion on the
Motion.
recommendation for the.
I was seeing if anybody wanted to add anything from.
Oh, you're open
For to the public.
I understand.
Nope. Okay. So we close public discussion.
Okay.
Anybody opposed to that? Do I first and second that, or do we need to do that?
For the record,
Okay.
motion, Peter makes a second, all say aye.
The stamp is coming next week.
Okay, so everybody is in favor of that. All right, we'll, discussion?
If there's not discussion, I'll make a motion that the request be recommended for approval to the town council.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Mike? All in favor? Aye.
We get paid for this.
That's, we're moving through it now.
The page showed it up.
Who's second that motion?
Mike?
For Pete.
Pete.
Oh, sorry. Do we want to talk about the memorandum that
Yes.
was sent out?
Y'all good?
Thank you.
We'll go, March council meeting, March 8th.
Okay.
In 2000, the town adopted a new definition for short-term rental and short-term rental overlay district and created opportunity for overlay districts where there are multifamily complexes that would like to do short-term rental. We've used the same definition since 2000 and even clarified it slightly in 2018 when we added short-term rental applications and defined the process and tried to clarify a little bit of short-term rental use. Attached for you and sent you the memo and draft language that includes the land use code, the current definition of short-term rental, and a proposed definition. One of the issues that has been raised was the word use, very general use, or a very general application of the word use, and that we have all understood that the intention of short-term rental regulations was never to prohibit the weekend use of a homeowner of their own home, nor to prohibit their family or friends to just come up and use their home on occasion. That was never the intention of it. It was never what we were having problems with. The problem was rental and lease of properties in neighborhoods for weekends and weeks and things like that. That's what the problem was. So the term use can be wide open. It could be you allow your son and his wife to come up and use your home. That's use. Never as intended, but if you take the little application of the definition, it can be construed that way. So the current definition we have is the rental, lease, or use of an attached or detached residential dwelling unit for a duration that is less than 28 consecutive days. Short-term rental use does not include rooming houses, boarding houses, or bed and breakfast establishments, which are specifically addressed as separate uses within the table of permissible uses. Now, I did some research on other definitions, just Googled, and it came up, and I looked at some things that might help us better clarify what our intention in regulation of short-term rental is. So this proposed definition, and hopefully we've had an opportunity to look at it and maybe have a thought as to if it would work for us. In changing the term, instead of short-term rental of a dwelling unit, to short-term rental. The rental, lease, or offer to make available any attached or detached residential dwelling unit or portion thereof by way of a rental agreement, lease, license, or any other means, whether oral or written, for compensation or consideration for a duration that is less than 28 consecutive days. The rest of this section deals with what we have in other parts of our code, and that would be necessary to make those changes, to be consistent with that. But I reworked it some, took the last sentence out that we had, and put the focus on the rental and lease of a place, or making it available, usually online is where the catch is. And that it's for compensation or some other consideration, whether it goes into some kind of a rental pool, some kind of a program, all those catch-alls, we want to make that part of our definition. Be glad to look at other options if you have any, but talking with the town attorney, he felt like there needs to be some consideration of the definition and a little bit less emphasis on use and more on rental and lease. That's it.
The town attorney comfortable with the language?
Yes, I sent this version to him about 2 weeks ago. He was comfortable with what we had drafted. Let me hang on, I'm going to let Doug in. There are other examples, but I really came up with this definition based on what we had and 2 other definitions that I found, and just kind of merge the terms together. I think it works pretty good. Nothing's perfect, but I think this is better than what we have.
Is this still a big problem?
It depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you.
If one's going on next door to you, yeah, it's a huge problem. But it's always going to be a little bit of a problem. There may be enough movement in the General Assembly that it's going to be take away local government's ability to regulate. It may come to that. And that makes it easy on me. I don't have to deal with it anymore. But it makes it's not good for Blowing Rock. If the state said you can do it anywhere you want to, it's not good for Blowing Rock. It's not good for your neighborhoods. But if that happens, what will result is that we'll be chasing after the problems that come with that potentially can come with that. Dogs running loose and noise and parties and cars and trash and all those kind of things that are the bad effects of short-term rental gone bad. So, trying to make some clarifications to the ordinance that we have. We can't catch them all, and we rely heavily on complaints, and we investigate, and sometimes we find out, well, no, so-and-so came up and used my house. We're not against that. We don't want them abusing that and making, renting it and making it available for people to rent, where it's not supposed to be.
So the overlay district defines geographically where it can occur.
The overlay district is not really focused on, in our neighborhoods. An overlay district can be established through a process of rezoning and asking for that overlay. For example, Royal Oaks is really the only one that's got it. It
It
was
only
adopted in
exists one place
2000.
then.
Royal Oaks applied for, the overlay district applied for their property. That's the only one that's been approved in 22 years.
Wow.
Chatola has been doing it. They were grandfathered in, and that's what that place was set up as. Other places could, Glen Burnie, if they said, they're zoned R6, and if they wanted to do something like that, if they all agreed, they came to council. And so we want an overlay district to allow that. They can at least apply.
So you can't just walk in off the street and get a permit.
No, council has to approve, planning board has to review, and council has to approve.
Okay.
And in fact, the only time that's been applied for, since I've been here, is on Ransom Street, the two duplexes that Rick Riddle built, and was not approved.
So from an enforcement standpoint, if you find out about it, then you make them come in and apply, or you would make them go through that process if they wanted to continue.
That's two different things. So if they wanted to, if it was a place like Glenmore,
Just some individual's house.
Individual house is not eligible
Okay.
in R15. It's only in R6M and R6M and R10M zoning districts, where multifamily structures located. And there's an HOA that controls it.
All short-term rental, you're saying?
No,
Okay,
short-term rental overlay district.
okay.
I may have
Oh, we got two
confused the
different things
process
going
by
on.
talking about when the
Right.
definition for short-term rental was adopted. That's when it was done. If you're in R15, you cannot apply for short-term rental overlay.
But you can do a short-term rental.
No,
No.
not in R15.
No.
It is not allowed. And this does not change where you can do it.
Okay.
Short-term rental is allowed in general business, town center, central business, office institution, and Chatola, and Royal Oaks. That's the only places it's allowed.
What about ETJ?
No, unless it's been grandfathered prior to us taking it over, but otherwise, no, it's not permitted in ETJ. Unless it's in the general business section, out towards Evanston Road out there.
Okay.
And there's some general business where it would be allowed, up behind Roll Rock Lodge, and places like that. The focus of this draft ordinance is to revise the definition of short-term rental. And if you're okay with what has been proposed, we can discuss it, move forward, or whatever you'd like to do. Council knows this is coming to them in March.
Any discussion?
We need to have public comment.
Public comment?
If anybody wants to speak.
All right. If that's, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay.
As written?
Your job, Peter.
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Do I have to make a motion to close? Any other business?
Anything, any other business, anything else anybody wants to bring up, questions?
I see that the Rainy Lodge is underway.
Underway. Yeah.
Probably muddy mess over
Details
there.
on the retaining wall system that they're proposing. Some design characteristics in the look of the rock. Trying to close in on that. We've had some disagreements back and forth with myself and the applicant, but we're getting close to ironing that out. So there's 7 of us. Mike is coming off the board, and council reviewed the applicants at the retreat last week, and in the March meeting, it's later than normal, should be February, but at the March meeting, they'll appoint 4 new members to serve on the board. And we'll have a meeting. If we don't have any agenda items, we'll at least have an organizational meeting at our regular March 17th meeting to elect chairman, vice chairman, put together subcommittees. We're going to be talking, looking at downtown regulations, parking, outdoor dining. If you've not seen the retreat, some of those topics came up. And then we will at some point later on start the process of finding someone else with a comprehensive plan and start getting that process started. Not right now, but maybe towards late summer and start looking at that. But we've got a lot of work to do on this downtown stuff. So we want to assign some people that want to work on that. We want to make it a public process and open the door a lot more than we did a couple of years ago when we were looking at the downtown regulations.
So we're looking at another comprehensive plan as opposed to the one that was presented 10, 15 years ago.
Well, what we've always done is update the one that we have, but I think we can look at a new one. It doesn't have to be tied to a particular date. We had the 2004 comp plan, we had the 2014 update. We've got a lot of different ways we can go with it. We've been on a 10-year schedule for the last 30 years, so it's time to initiate the process.
Is there a statutory requirement for a comprehensive plan?
We have to have one, yes there is, but we don't have to, there's not a set time. Some communities don't change that much. Typically, 10 to 15 years, sometimes 20 is about the norm probably across the state. Do you agree with that, Bill?
Mm-hmm.
So we're coming up on it. We started the last one in end of 2012 by starting a survey, online survey, did most of the work through 2013 and adopted it in 2014. So we're getting close.
We added a lot of properties to our tax base in the last year or so.
Yes. Revals, I think, are complete. Property values, tax values here are going to be going up.
When do you expect that process to be completed?
I don't know. I'm not involved in it, but I know it will be pre-budget for this year, so the town council can look at setting the rate. But it will definitely go up. I don't know what the number is, but I think our current value is 1.1 or 1.2 billion property tax base, but it will go up. The Scotchman, they're looking at they've been doing some investigation of the building to see if they're able to structurally keep the building intact. But they have asked, and I said, if if they need to, they can take the building to the ground and build back up in the footprint based on what they had proposed, what y'all had approved.
That's just a slab there, right?
Yes, yes.
Anything on the coffee shop?
No, no activity yet. Nothing on the hotel that was approved by Hetherington, but I anticipate it will be coming soon. Be
Exciting
interesting
time.
to see with the inflation, the way it's going, to see if we're going to stay on the pace that we're at. I presented to the council at the retreat that we were the second highest in construction value last year, the most building permits by about 35 that we had ever issued, 404 permits.
Wow.
16 new homes at, I forgot the number, I want to say it was 18 million. And then $11 million worth, it was $11 million worth of additions and renovations last year. That's a lot. But I don't know if that pace will keep up, you know, things are changing daily. You know. Part of our world is at war, so it'll be interesting to see.
All right. Anybody care to make a motion to adjourn?
Michael,
Okay.
Peter?
Be consistent.
All in favor? All right.
Yeah.